What's up, and welcome to Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries, episode 17 for the year 2016. I've given up on trying to figure out the exact dates for all these old podcasts. This podcast happened just maybe a week or so after Hurricane Matthew slammed my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, and put me out of commission for about a week. So I was still recovering from that in this podcast. You know, I normally ask how Mike is doing, but I think with the situations that happened last week, I'm going to ask myself how I'm doing. How are you doing, Josh? Well, I'll tell you, hurricanes fucking suck, folks. I don't know if anybody keeps up with the weather if you don't live in the South, you know, and it's not affecting you. I wouldn't blame you. I probably wouldn't either, but yeah, we had a Category 4 hurricane. Hurricane Matthew hit the coast around Friday morning or something, or Friday afternoon, and it wiped our power out for 4 days. So for 4 days I was without power, and it sucked, man. It really sucked. Like, you know, the first 2 days of not having power is fine, because it's like you still have a bunch of reserves, like your batteries and food. But on that third and fourth day, all the batteries are depleted, the freezers are defrosted, the food is spoiled, you're having to go to friends and family's houses just to take a shower, just to use the bathroom, because we live out in the country, so when our water reserve runs out, then we don't have water either, so you can't even use the bathroom at your own freaking house, which is just like degrading in a certain way. And
that's a bummer.
Yeah, not to mention, like, all my, you know, the internet is such a big, like, part of a lot of the stuff I do, so I couldn't do anything productive in that realm. I had a wedding on Sunday that I literally had to prepare for. I had to get all the songs. I had to go to various spots around town and use their free Wi-Fi like a bum, and just to get the songs ready for the wedding. And the day of the wedding, just anxiety central. I was so nervous. I had never been so ill prepared for a wedding before. And it was all because of this damn weather. And even this podcast coming out a little late, it's because I got backlogged with all this other crap I had to do. So apologize to Patreons that this isn't out sooner. And to the rest of you folks, it's coming out on schedule, because we're, like I said earlier, we're going to start releasing these on Friday. So yeah. I'm here, though, and it could have been a lot worse. For sure.
See, that's the thing. It could have been a lot worse. I mean, the closest I can get to anything is tornadoes. I lived in Oklahoma with my dad for a couple of years, and they didn't really hit anywhere near where we were. But I always remember this because the tornado, it hit the exact same Chuck E. Cheese 2 years in a row.
That's already a funny story. It hit the same exact Chuck E. Cheese. You'd say no more. that was
well, because it was just like, it's like God is just sending a message to this Chuck E. Cheese. It's like, move, just get out of here, leave.
I liked their pizza growing up, though, for some reason. I have memories of enjoying their pizza. Their pizza wasn't terrible.
And then the closest thing I can get to in terms of power going out somewhat lately was a couple days ago. And this is a mystery to me, because all of a sudden I couldn't access websites like Amazon.com and a bunch of domain websites pretty late at night, a little bit after midnight. And so I thought, okay, maybe it's an internet problem, but I could go to Facebook and YouTube, no problem. And there was other websites that I could actually access, but other ones just wouldn't load or they time out. So then I'd go online and I checked, this sort of website. It's like, is it down or whatever? Or I think it's like this sort of kind of like Facebook. It's connected to Facebook, I think. So you can leave comments and talk about what's happening. And I looked up at Amazon, and there were a bunch of other people that were dealing with the same problems, with not being able to get to Amazon. And then some guy left a comment and he said, well, people wonder if they can't get Amazon. Check out this page, about Comcast. And there was like over 400 comments from all these different people from all over the country saying, yeah, internet and cable is out. And then like another guy said, this is really weird because I looked up something and two of Google's DNS servers were down. And so that also messed up Comcast. And so it was kind of freaky to me because I was like, this has to be one of the biggest widespread cable internet outages I've ever seen. And I haven't really looked up a follow-up on the news to see what, might have happened. But part of me was thinking, okay, I'm looking at the news. There on Amazon UK, there was some controversy with some burqa costumes.
What was that about anyway?
I guess they had costumes that were burqas, and people found it offensive. And I could see why people from the Middle East would be offended by that, apparently. And maybe, this is my theory, maybe they started doing a bunch of cyber terrorism that night and just started attacking the United States through the internet. I mean, that much of a widespread computer, internet and TV outage, that can't just be some glitch in the system, especially if two of the servers went down at Google. So that was like really, ooh.
All right, folks. So your homework assignment is comment on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/uncovering unsolved mysteries. Did you have any problems with your internet as well? And let's take a poll because we got people from all over the country and the rest of the English-speaking world here, and it's even non-English-speaking. If you lost internet connection, and what day was this, or what time period?
It was a couple days ago. Let me. I know it was last week. I think it was on the weekend. I'm checking my Facebook feed right now because I remember writing posts about it.
Because my power was out. I mean, we had no all of Jacksonville was without power. So obviously I had some outages, but that was not related.
October 11th at like 2:00 in the morning for me, and like I said, 2 days ago.
Huh. All right.
And there was a bunch of people like commenting on the same thing. So.
Well, so I would like to take this opportunity to thank the listeners that reached out to me. Before I even made that post on our page, they reached out to me and they're like, hey, I hope you're safe and blah, blah. Thank you guys. That was really cool. That was really nice of you guys to reach out and, ask me if I was all right and everything. It's thank you for taking the time out to do that. I do appreciate that. We are on Patreon, as we said earlier. You can donate to our podcast if you feel like our content is worth money of any kind. You do get some special perks on there. Just ask Corin; she'll tell you. She's one of our high tier pledges. You get bonus segments, Q&As. You can request segments over there that will, more than 90% for sure will do.
We should probably set up a voting sort of thing for maybe a special Halloween episode.
True.
Like,
wouldn't be a bad idea.
Set up like a voting thing for our patrons or on Facebook to say like we might handpick some segments and then ask them which ones they'd like us to talk about for like some Halloween special.
Yeah. So if you want to donate to us, it's patreon.com/uncovering unsolved mysteries. Everything that's associated with us is going to be uncovering unsolved mysteries because we got into the field of doing or talking about unsolved mysteries when nobody else was talking about the show Unsolved Mysteries. Although
what's funny is I saw a video show up later that was talking about the Scared to Death case that came from like this year, and it was some guy, but his production value wasn't nearly as high as yours and ours is. And his mic wasn't even as good as mine. But the thing is, he did have pictures from the show, though, but they were in really bad quality. So, just because you have pictures doesn't necessarily make the video better, or the content better.
Yeah.
Didn't have that many views either. So.
I don't even know what makes a video popular anymore because I
think it's just you and I are very passionate about this show. And I think a lot of people... they remember the show and then they hear an episode and maybe they get hooked because like, man, there's fans of the show just like me, and they seem to actually know what they're talking about, and they don't just talk. They talk about the segment itself and not just the case, and You know, they're entertaining and they're fun.
The passion does go into it a bit, because I have seen some Unsolved Mysteries reviews and people just sitting on their couch talking about the show, and you know that you do have to have passion there, or else it's just you're just kind of like reading out loud what I could read online for myself, you know, describing the cases and stuff.
Exactly.
So without further ado, we didn't even discuss the order of these segments that we're going to talk about. I guess it's going to be Russian roulette right now. I guess we'll start out the first case with one that I remember from my childhood, called Joe Cole is the name of it, the name of the guy.
I never saw this one until Josh pointed it out to me.
Yeah, this is one I do remember from my childhood. This is one that they did play on Lifetime on the reruns back in the day, so this is how I saw it. It's got kind of a little twist in the like, as far as one of the guests that comments in there that I really that I guess that helped this one stick out to me more so. But I do want to talk about Joe Cole as well, because you know this was a really senseless kind of thing, and it was a sad story to hear about. So actor Dennis Cole has appeared in dozens of TV shows like The Young and the Restless, Fantasy Island, etc. And if life worked out like a scripted TV show, his son Joe Cole would still be around today. So Dennis Cole is I guess semi-famous actor who's been in sitcoms and stuff like that. He had this son Joe. Joe was he died tragically in his 20s, unfortunately. Now, there's no good way to lose a child, but sudden random violence is one of the worst. An unknown gunman shot Joe Cole during a holdup that netted them less than $50. He was murdered in front of his home in front of Venice Beach, California, in one of the most violent sections of Los Angeles. And then it kind of cuts to people working out in sunny California, and you know the tone kind of strikes a stark contrast here on the segment itself. Robert Stack's narrating. He goes, "But Venice hides its troubles well. Indeed, this beachfront suburb is the scene of a year-long street party. The area is home to writers, artists, and musicians. Joe Cole, an actor and photographer, fit right in, as would me, and as would probably Mike."
I don't know if I'd fit in at Venice Beach.
Oh, you fit in, Mike. You'd be roller skating on the beach, down the beach every day. You'd be pumping iron in the little outside gym things they have out there for some reason. I don't know. It's like a prison yard. They have like these like outside gym equipment. In Venice, Joe Cole set himself the task of documenting the plight of... Now, I find this interesting. He would document the plight of Vietnam vets. Cole was helped by his longtime friend, Henry Rollins, actor and lead singer of the Rollins Band. And just to hear Robert Stack go, you know, Cole was helped by his longtime friend, Henry Rollins, actor and lead singer of the Rollins Band. You know, it's like... Robert Stack probably was still listening to, like, you know, Miles Davis and, like, you know, the Beatles, and I don't know what the fuck.
You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. He could be listening. He could be down.
He sounds like a really cool guy.
Stack might be down with Black Flag for all I know. Cause,
or listen to some Slayer. You know,
oh god, that would be fucking hilarious. So yeah, Henry Rollins was Joe Cole's best friend. You know, like Mr. Stack said, Rollins was the lead singer of the Henry Rollins Band. They were an alternative band in the 90s. They did that song, Liar. They did some other songs, but that was probably their biggest hit.
See, I remember, because when I saw Henry Rollins, I'm like, hey, it's the guy from Johnny Mnemonic. You know, because I remember him more as an actor than a singer, but I've heard some of his songs, and I thought he was pretty good. I also remember him doing commentary for the VH1 series I Love the 80s.
Yeah, he was a talking head on I Love the 80s, as was every menial celebrity in the world back then. But no, Rollins is a really awesome dude. He's got a really good perspective. He does spoken word tours now mainly. That's what he doesn't really do music much, which sucks. He hosted the show on the History Channel, I believe, called 10 Things You Didn't Know About America or something like that. Rollins is he's just a good dude. If you ever hear him talk, if you ever hear any of his spoken word stuff on YouTube or anything, he's got a really logical, just he's a very smart guy, and you know, you see him, he's all tatted up, and he looks like an old punk rocker, but he's very intelligent when he speaks. And he, like I said, he also fronted the band Black Flag. So I'm a huge fan of Henry Rollins, and I remember seeing Henry Rollins, like someone that you expect to see like on stage or in a movie.
But to see him on Unsolved Mysteries,
seeing him on Unsolved Mysteries with like the cameras that Unsolved Mysteries uses with that give it kind of that fuzzy nostalgic 90s kind of glow, and it's weird, you know. It's like, wow,
it was a very surreal thing.
It was surreal.
It was like, okay, like this is the first time we really have like technically a pretty big celebrity interviewed on the show, because the other ones were, you know, the Tammy Lynn Lepper, you know, not really, kind of a movie star, but not really, you know. I can't really, you know, and the other ones were people that had already passed away, you know, like Elvis, or, you know, some of these other more well-known celebrities, like Kurt Cobain and so on. But to actually have, you know, one that's still alive and, you know, and well, and Henry Rollins, that was a very...
And he was young, too. And
he was very young.
He was young as hell, because, like, now he's all gray and he's older, but he was a young little pup in this segment. But
it was like Henry Rollins circa, you know, The Chase with Charlie Sheen and, you know, Johnny Mnemonic. So.
See, I would say Henry Rollins circa the Wait album, because that was the album that... Because I know him from music, Mike knows him from movies.
You said this is season 8, right? So that was in 95 or something?
Yeah.
Johnny Mnemonic came out in 95.
Johnny Mnemonic was such a weird movie. That was like the Matrix.
That was the Matrix before.
Yeah, it was so weird.
Matrix.
I mean, even Keanu Reeves played like the same role for the most part.
I can watch it, but I can see why people think it. You know, I love Dolph Lundgren as this crazy preacher guy. He was like he thought he was Jesus or something, and he was also some assassin. And there was this actor, I forgot his last name, but he was this really well-established Japanese actor. He was pretty good in it. I always remember the laser whip, and I love the scene where Keanu Reeves is all like just ranting at the top of his lungs. You know, he's about, I want a cold beer. You know, I want room service.
Whoa. That's the only Keanu line I ever know for any of his movies. Whoa. Tell me more. Anyway, I think he peaked at Bill and Ted. No, I'm just joking. I think John Wick was really good. He did lately, and I can't wait for the sequel to come out. Is that a recent one? John Wick came out in 2014, I believe, or 2013. That's good, because for a while there I was kind of concerned, because he was in Something's Gotta Give with Jack Nicholson, and I felt like his role in that was, I'm like, man, is he really going back to playing like these, you know, kind of sedated roles? You know, I kind of like, you know, I like Keanu in action movies. Yeah, like Speed and things like that. And then I would remember the quote from Johnny Mnemonic. It was like, hit me. Because he's like, hit me with the data or whatever. I could totally see that in the future. People just downloading data in their head. Yeah, I felt like that movie was maybe kind of ahead of its time in some aspects. Yeah, because this is the whole thing where he's all like, listen to me. You see that city over there? That's where I'm supposed to be. Not down here with the dogs and the garbage and the fucking last month's newspapers blowing back and forth. I've had it with them. I've had it with you. I've had it with all this. I want room service. I want the club sandwich. I want the cold Mexican beer. I want a $10,000 a night hooker. I want my shirts laundered like they do at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. How do you remember all this shit? Your memory, man, it's like a steel trap. God. I looked up IMDb to get that quote. Oh, okay. I'm not that good. I was about to say. There's certain quotes I remember, but no. So for the people, I remember the room service one though. For the people who don't like our chit chat, you really just got pissed off in those last 3 minutes. So anyway, Henry Rollins is narrating now. Back to the Joe Cole profiling the Vietnam vets. Henry Rollins is narrating and he's saying, Those men you see talking to themselves standing next to payphones on the streets, he would bond with these people where they wouldn't give you the time of day. They tell Joe his life, Joe, their life stories, which I thought was an interesting quote because if you think about it, homeless people only give you one side of them, and that's the, hey man, can you please spare me $1? Can you spare me any change or whatever? Yeah, they're putting on an act. They're putting on the help me, give me money kind of, but there's like this super interesting story to this person's life, but they're not going to tell you because you're just some stranger, which sounds ironic because so are they, and they're in more of a position of need, so you'd think maybe they would be wanting to open up to somebody. But, a lot of them don't, though, and
a lot of them don't trust people.
Right.
They've lost trust in other people, and that's kind of led to their situation that they're in. It's because of, this of trust issues and, betrayal and, people have let them down or they've let themselves down. I mean, not every homeless person is just somebody who's always been
an addict.
Really an addict, or always been an alcoholic, or always been struggling to make ends meet from the very beginning. There are some really tragic, just sad cases of some people who've gone homeless because their families have disowned them, because of their lifestyle choices or something, or, they made business decisions and they lost a lot of money. They lost everything. And they weren't able to get things back together because they just didn't have a support group. So, I mean, it's crazy. Not every homeless person is the same. And some people aren't even homeless. So there's that too.
That's what my dad thinks is the case with all homeless people. He's like, they'll be on the street panhandling and then they'll go back to their $100,000 mansion. And I'm just like, no, I'm pretty sure.
That's over-exaggerating.
Pretty sure that's not.
The percentage.
Yeah, the percentages are kind of off on that one. I think that's.
Although when I see like a kid with the fucking iPod and like new sneakers and shit on the side of the road, like I've seen that before, and he's like, I need money for like to get an apartment or something or to go somewhere, and I'm like, dude, you're listening to a fucking iPod and you have like nice clothes and sneakers. Don't give me.
Well, that's like
not homeless.
It's like e-begging now. There was that one story about the guy on the GoFundMe who wanted people to give him like $600 because of his cable or his electric bill was way behind, and he ended up getting that and then some. And it's just like, why do people respect that form of begging more than the actual people on the street who look like they need it?
Maybe I should go on. I need a new microphone.
Well, we're kind of doing that, but at least we're offering a service for your money.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know. It's funny.
But anyway, this Joe Cole guy, he would get in close with these guys, and he would, in the book, I guess it was some kind of book or something he was working on about these homeless people and these veterans and stuff. It sounded like it would have been a really awesome book that I would have really loved to have read, because I would love to hear these people's stories and, how they got into a situation they got into. So Joe Cole was unfortunately murdered before he could complete that work. At the time, Rollins and Cole were renting a place in Venice. Looking back, Rollins has a less than innocent view of life on the edge. And this is Henry Rollins talking now. You get in your little rituals when you live in a community. Wash day Friday, chicken day Sunday. For a predator, for a robber, this is what they go on. They need routine. They need habit. It was Rollins and Cole's habit to shop at a corner store a block from their house. Their visit on December 19th, 1991 was forgettably ordinary until they got a few feet from their front door. Quoting Rollins here, within 1 second you were going from the 90 millionth trip to the grocery store home to 2 guns in your face, and your reality changes abruptly. Everything seemed to go very slowly, and time seemed to kind of hover. One robber shoved Rollins to his knees, and the other forced Joe Cole to the ground. Said to Rollins, if you yell, if you scream, I'll blow your head off. I said, okay. What was going through my mind was, if I speak loud, the gun will go off. If I whisper, maybe it won't. And the gun is very delicate and has a life of its own. And if I'm cool, maybe it won't jump out and bite me. See, this is the kind of like wordplay that Rollins uses all the time, even his spoken word stuff. He's really, I recommend checking out his spoken word stuff
I mean,
on YouTube.
you can tell that he's a very smart man, and it probably went into his lyrics. I mean, some of that kind of stuff sounds like it could be song lyrics, the guns in the back fight me.
So robbers led them inside, and Rollins said that, because the robbers said, "Is there anyone else home?" And Rollins said, my roommate's home, and he was trying to deter them because he figured if I say that there's someone else inside, maybe they won't proceed. But that didn't seem to bother them, that there was somebody inside. Quote, "I was trying to think of some way to get us out of this, because it's as if you're going to go for some kind of movie stunt like grabbing the gun. That's not going to work. That's fiction." At that moment, what I thought was going to happen was that we'd be marched into the house and we'd be executed while they robbed the place at their leisure. I heard feet scuffling on the front porch, and then I heard gunshots. And I remember standing there perfectly still with my hands up for a couple of seconds afterwards, thinking how strange gunshots sounded inside this room as the sound ricocheted inside the walls. And then my legs took off. I did not know that the state that Joe was in. I hardly remember even leaving the house. All I remember is getting to a phone and calling the police and told them what I thought had happened. Though the police arrived within minutes, Joe Cole was already dead, and the villains had melted into the night. The police put in hours interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people. The suspects probably live in the Oakwood community. The investigators saying this at this point. Criminals always talk. Somebody knows something that happened to Joe Cole. Now it's back to Rollins. When someone dies in this way, it's not just a loss of a life. There's a mother, there's a father, and then all of us, the friends, who lost this fantastic person. And you never recover from it all the way. You always carry some of it with you, and it wrecks you year after year. As mutilated a concept as justice is in this country, and how it only seems to benefit a certain skin color and a certain economic place in America, real justice is a pretty righteous thing, and I'd like to see it done and exacted on these individuals. A $25,000 reward is being offered in the case. The suspect is, this is my commentary on this case. The suspect is so vague looking, because they have an artist rendition at the end. He's so vague looking, they're never going to find them without someone turning the guy in, or the guy himself confessing. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of this story here.
That's the problem. I mean, these type of cases are acts of random violence, and they're very hard to solve. Because there's no motive, there's really not much connection. To the victim. There really isn't any sort of, there's not a lot of evidence that's usually left behind except a dead body and maybe some gun casing shells. Some of the cases, and I know just for like $50. I mean, it reminds me of this one where there's this trucker who's just on a payphone getting ready to call his family or whatever, and I don't know who these people are, but they showed up, drove up, snuck up behind him or whatever, got out of the car and shot him point blank with a shotgun right in the back. And just, once again, for like something as measly as like $50, and then just hightailed it out of there. There's another guy who got shot by this passerby. He was just driving late at night. He couldn't sleep. He's going to go get some donuts at the corner store, and this guy swerves in front of him. They almost collide. He stops his car because he wants to, get his information, as anyone would, because they want to make sure, insurance involved. So, if there's any sort of problems or whatever, they can get it taken care of. And the guy just gets in an argument with them, this black guy, and then pulls out a gun on him and shoots him 3 times.
Yeah, see, the unfortunate thing, and this is something that I like about Unsolved Mysteries, is, if you watch Cops, the show Cops, if you watch these kind of shows, they edit it and they make it look like the bad guy always gets caught and the good guy always wins. But the sad truth is, a lot of times they don't get caught, or sometimes they don't get caught.
Most of the time is usual people get caught. I don't remember very many episodes of Cops where the guy got away.
No,
so on Unsolved
there was
Mystery,
very few episodes. I mean, there are some instances where they got away, but very few.
And Unsolved Mysteries and other shows like America's Most Wanted, there is that sort of thing where it's like, yeah, this guy's still out there. And, that is so heart-wrenching for the families and for the friends, that this person is not going to get justice. But it's very, very satisfying. And when they do, when there is an update and they are caught, I mean, I always, when that happens, I'm just like, yeah, gotcha.
What I don't understand and what I can't get through my head and why I would, even if I thought I could get away with it, how do these people, if they're human beings, if they're real human beings, how do they live with the fact that they most likely, because these guys probably escaped as soon as they shot, their weapons and, Henry ran away. How do they live with themselves knowing that they took somebody else's life or probably took someone else's life? I feel like if I took somebody else's life, that would drive me to the point to where I wouldn't want to live. Like, that's how much I respect life.
For me, I respect life I mean, if someone's trying to take my life, I mean, I'm not going to hesitate, when it comes to, it's either me or them, so when it comes to that sort of thing, I mean, it would be a very shocking thing. It would be something that would take me a little bit to get over. I'd probably react to it in a similar way that, a character in a film called Cold in July with Michael C. Hall, Dexter himself, Dexter from the Showtime series, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's an excellent film. And I'd react the same way he did, where, he shot this robber dead in his own living room. As this whole sort of, finds out it's like some kid or whatever, and you're just like, I took somebody's life, but, if I didn't do it, then, I'd be dead, or my family would be dead. So I'd be able to justify it in that sense. And I'd be able to eventually, I think, live with that. But I would still carry it with me. Because,
I think it would haunt me, even if I was in the right. Like, that. That's one.
Like I said, I'd still carry it with me, but it wouldn't make me feel like, oh man, like I can't go on living because I protected myself and my family from some, guy who wanted to take away my life and my family's life.
I mean, all you got to do is like look at the veterans that come back from Afghanistan and Iraq.
But that's a different sort of situation. I'm talking about somebody like just breaks into your house and is trying to kill your family and kill you or whatever.
I don't know how different the situation is exactly, because it's like you're going
to war. Like in a war situation, veterans, like, that's their thing. It's kill or be killed. Like, you're not really you're defending your life, but at the same time, there's always a constant. They're after you. They're getting after you, and I think, and it is. I mean, for everyone reacts differently. I can't sit here and say that for sure I'd be able to carry on normally if I had to, kill someone in self-defense. But I'm just thinking about the different sort of things. I mean, when it comes to killing in self-defense, I think you might be able to live with it if you have the right support group. It's still you're never gonna forget it. It's just something that's gonna be etched in your memory until the day you die. But if you have your family still with you and things like that, I think you make enough memories that can kind of, and that's like a one-time thing. I mean, veterans, some of them have just killed hundreds of people. So I mean, that's really got to get to you. And of course, being in the line of fire.
Yeah.
I mean, time after time after time. So I could totally see why they have PTSD and things like that. Now with the killer, it doesn't care. I mean, like this, he was speaking of military, in an episode segment of season 5 of the show, Unsolved Mysteries. There was this African-American guy. He was a former military guy. He's a survivalist. He goes in, and he doesn't like the way his relationship has ended with his wife, so he stalks her around, follows her to her apartment. And, she was there. He breaks into her apartment, is there with her kids. She's like, get out of here. And she runs over to the neighbors next door. and they're going to call the cops. And the guy just cold-blooded just grabs his gun and shoots the person on the phone. He never knew her. Then goes in and shoots his wife in the head in front of his kids, and then goes in and shoots the husband in the back of the head, of the person who lived in the house next door. And then he goes on the run, and he lives as some kind of survivalist in the woods somewhere, and eventually he gets caught though, which was a good ending for it. But it's still one of those things. They have no remorse.
I feel like with that guy, I feel like that was more of a crime of passion. He was consumed with jealous rage, and I think he didn't.
I think he's meant. I don't think he's mentally all there.
Well, like, right. He's obviously anybody who would react to jealous rage with a gun is not all there. But I think that's a little different than the Joe Cole case, because these robbers, that was a random premeditated attack.
Exactly. I'm just saying, when somebody kills somebody like that.
Yeah.
They don't show very much of remorse, really. I mean, if somebody is willing to point a gun at somebody to steal money, I don't think they're going to really... I don't think they're at the point now where, if I kill this guy, I'm going to feel bad about it. I think they... Maybe later in their lives. But some of these people are just career criminals. I mean, that's just like this one guy who shot a cop. And he was on the run, and as far as I know, he's still on the run. And he shot the cop because the cops were at this place he was at, and he did not want to go back to jail. So, I mean, every case is different, but, I mean, there probably are some people who feel guilty about that kind of thing. But, I mean, if you're willing to fucking put somebody at gunpoint, I mean, you would think you would also be willing to deal with whatever the consequences or it's one of those things that maybe out of desperation the person was stealing money, but I mean, there's other ways to get money.
I mean, if you're gonna get money from desperation, rob a bank or some corrupt institution. Yeah. Don't kill an innocent civilian. I mean, I'm not advocating robbing a bank.
The guy probably was. There's probably drugs involved. That's usually a big thing.
Yeah.
People are addicts. And they, and if they were an addict at the time, if these people who killed Joe Cole, if they were looking for drugs and then they ran out of drugs and ran out of money for drugs, I mean, they might have been high at that time. So they would not have had any sort of, there's a one-track mind. Drugs do that to you.
Oh, yeah,
You're
absolutely.
Just like, I just want the drugs. I need the money for the drugs. I don't know. I don't even care anymore. I don't care. Anybody gets in my way, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna get, I need my drugs. The drugs are more important than anything.
I guess my final point to this is that I don't think human beings are wired to kill other human beings. I don't think we're naturally wired that way, and I think that it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a defense mechanism, I think we can do that, like any other type of animal, but. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to just like straight up killing people, just for the sake of killing other people, yeah, probably not. But certain people, I think, are wired because of their criminal, because of their criminal psychosis.
Right. Well, so you have your mental deficiency, of course, like your Dahmers and.
I mean, those people. I mean, absolutely.
And I don't know what Hitler was. I don't even think he was human.
Yeah, he's something else.
Yeah, he was. Moving on to a more lighter topic. Well, it's not really lighter at all in any way, shape, or form, but this is one that Mike picked. It's called the Sara Jo.
It's a missing persons case. It's the lost crew of the Sara Jo, and this one stood out to me because of kind of the bizarre circumstances of this makeshift grave found on an island multiple years later after this crew disappeared. It takes place in Hawaii, and that's relatable to me because I was born in Hawaii. I was born in a pink hospital of all things, in Honolulu, Hawaii. My mom and my dad met when they were both in the Navy, and I was pretty much the only good thing that came out of that relationship because they didn't last very long, about 5 years. or even less than that when after they got married. They got divorced when I was 5, and I don't really remember anything about Hawaii. And I still would love to go. I would love to go to Honolulu. I would love to, go with my mom and kind of show me around about the sort of, places and stuff like that, where we might have lived, because that would be nice to see and a nice memory to have, because I don't have any memories of that. I was so young. Also, because I have Asperger's syndrome, developmentally I was so behind that, like, even if I was at the age the biologically that I'm supposed to remember something, mentally I wasn't. I was at least 3 years behind. So yeah, so if I was 3, I was probably like 1 or not even that. So, I don't really remember much. But anyway, on February 11, 1979, in the town of Hana, on the Hawaiian island of Maui, 5 local men left their small village to go pleasure fishing on a 17-foot Boston whaler named the Sara Joe. The men, Benjamin Kalama, Ralph Malakakini, Scott Moorman, Patrick Wosner, and Peter Hanchett were all experienced fishermen. They left around 10 in the morning, and it was a clear day and the weather was calm. But in the early afternoon, the wind suddenly changed direction, the sign of a pending storm. Peter's father, John Hanchett Sr., grew concerned. This is him quoted. He said, "I told Dave we better get down the coast to see if we could spot those boys and wave them in." And as the storm grew, John and a friend went in search of the Sara Joe. By this time, it was really blowing a gale, and the rain was beginning to come down, and it was storming. We went out of Hana Harbor about a half a mile and then down the coast, and I didn't see any sign of the boys. The oceans were fierce. I've never seen it get that rough. And then, of course, the father started a search for the missing crew, the Sara Joe. And he started this the next day. He continued this search with the help of a marine biologist named John Naughton. And their search on that day would ultimately prove to be completely fruitless. Nobody else had reported seeing the Sara Joe. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find a trace of it. They couldn't find the lost crew. The following day, the Coast Guard then joined because the combined efforts of John and this marine biologist weren't enough. But according to Captain Jim Cushman of the U.S. Coast Guard, they really didn't know where to look. This is him quoted. He says, "The initial place where we started searching was very ill-defined because we weren't really sure exactly where the Sara Joe had gone fishing. So it encompassed a relatively large area, and initially that first day, and then the area got bigger and bigger. So yeah, on that first day, it was just this really, they started out as a pretty big area, and then it expanded to an even bigger one, and then an even bigger one.
I'd like to
and
chime
then
in. The Coast Guard was saying, it didn't help that the Sara Joe's boat coloration, a blue boat with white trim, was literally the same exact color of the ocean.
Yeah.
So that made it nearly impossible to see them from the air.
Yeah, so when the search was finally suspended 5 days later, the Coast Guard said they had searched about 73,000 square miles. I mean, that's a lot of miles.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And over the next few weeks, well, there's birds and stuff in Hawaii, I guess. Over the next few weeks, the Hana residents combed the local beaches, and they didn't find shit. We ain't found shit, looking for any sign of the missing Boston whaler. And when no trace was found, their loved ones eventually gave up all hope. But then, the case took a very mysterious turn, because 10 years later, on September 9th, 1988, an incredible coincidence suddenly led to a major break in the case. 2,000 miles west of Hawaii in the Marshall Islands, John Naughton, the very same marine biologist who had searched for the Sara Joe a decade earlier, was on a wildlife expedition on a deserted atoll called the Taongi, and he spotted a small boat there. And John and his crew went on shore to inspect the wreckage, and they were shocked by what they found. This is John here. He's quoted. He says, "On the boat, there were still a few letters and numbers from the registration number, and immediately I saw that it started with HA, which indicates that the boat was registered in Hawaiian Islands." And about 60 yards away, John and his crew came up upon another startling discovery: a shallow grave, a makeshift grave, and like rocks, and there's like a little makeshift cross in put into the rocks and things like that. And this is John. He continues. This is when we got up there. We could see immediately that there was a human jawbone protruding out of the pile of rocks. At the time, we had no way of knowing the grave site was associated with the wrecked whaler. I mean, why would you think so? I mean, this is 10 years later. He actually was on this island pretty soon after they disappeared. It didn't find anything.
Yeah.
And after finding no sign of anyone else on the island, the men contacted the Coast Guard, which is what you would do. I mean, you find a body, a makeshift grave, you contact the Coast Guard. And they ran a check of the registration number, and they made a positive ID. It was the Sara Jo. The grave was excavated, and parts of a human skeleton were uncovered. Dental records that identified the remains as Scott Moorman, one of the 5 missing men. Captain Cushman explains that a strange clue also found buried with the skeleton. It was a very strange clue. It was very weird. He said it was a sheaf of paper. I'd like to say a book, except it was not bound. Probably 3 inches by 3 inches by maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. But between each of these 3 pieces of paper, there was a very small square piece of tinfoil material. We have not been able to determine who placed that there or what purpose it serves. Well, according to some people who were leaving comments on the more unsolved mysteries, their website, they said the loose notepad paper looks like what I would call spirit money when translated into English. Please go visit a lot of Asian stores. They have very different kinds of spirit paper money. When I say spirit money, these papers are papers that are burned. They're burned to the dead. So it's a kind of way maybe to honor the dead. And in the spirit world, these papers are money to them. And in our culture, in some Asian cultures, when someone passes away, we give this money, this spirit money to them, and they burn it so that they can have it on the other side. And he says there are many different kinds of these papers. The one that was shown on this segment I haven't seen, but it looks a lot like all the other ones found in Asian stores. I thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
I figured that had some kind of spiritual or religious significance to it. I mean, I don't know why I didn't know why they didn't ascertain that themselves, like. I
know they were like, it's just a notepad. Like, I'm surprised they didn't make an assumption. Like, did it have to do with drugs?
Yeah.
Experts say that the Sara Jo could have drifted 2,000 miles to the Marshall Islands, and if so, would have had to arrive in about 3 months. But according to the brother of one of the missing men, a U.S. government survey of Tongi, full 6 years after the men had disappeared, found no trace of the Sara Jo. If this is true, where was the boat in the time between its disappearance and the government survey? Who buried Scott Moorman? And what is the significance of the pad of paper found in the grave, which of course is probably just spirit money? These questions were left unanswered, and the family was left with this sort of feeling of maybe they might be still alive, but I mean, the chances are probably pretty slim because they did found Scott Moorman's body. But then again, who buried him? I mean, that's another thing.
Well, out in that area, people are probably, you got a lot of fishers and local islanders who, they come across a body or bodies. They don't want to get the police involved because there's probably, natives just in general don't trust authority, or not authority, but they don't trust the government, their local governments, or the local, kind of law enforcement or whatever. Or maybe they felt like it wasn't necessary to get them involved. I feel like this was the work of a native, who kind of has a different mindset than our Western kind of philosophies on things or traditions or customs. So they see a body, or that maybe they just see skeletal remains, them being in that kind of water, I'm sure if they did perish, which obviously one of them did, decomposition was probably a much faster process, especially the fact that those waters probably weren't the coldest in the world. So, the bodies probably decomposed fairly quickly. Maybe some of them were eaten by sea life and maybe some bones washed ashore. But I feel like it was a native that came across it and felt the need to give it some kind of a dignified burial. I'm glad nobody insinuated foul play on the segment, because I don't think foul play was involved.
No, I don't think foul play was involved in this case either. But when other sort of questions you have, I mean, there's a possibility maybe Scott Moorman wasn't dead right away. I mean, and how did he and the Sara Joe make it 2,000 miles in a storm without any emergency supplies or any equipment? And what, of course, also what happened to the 4 other crew members. And apparently there's this article which sadly is no longer really available to look at, which is really too bad. It's a 2009 article that says that the family members of the missing men, they hired a PI. They hired a private investigator to look into the case and determine what had happened to the 4 other men, the lost crew members of the Sara Joe. And the new general consensus amongst the family members was that in the midst of this storm, Moorman tied himself to the Sara Joe for some reason, while the other 4 men either fell out of the boat or were knocked overboard and drowned at sea. They believe that Moorman could have survived for a short time, but not long enough to make it to the island where the boat and its remains were eventually found and discovered. Also, the island is a hot spot for Chinese fishermen who like to fish illegally there. So the PI's theory was that some fishermen who were there doing things that they weren't supposed to do, they fell upon or stumbled upon Moorman's remains in the boat, and they buried them quietly and never came forward out of fear of getting caught. And considering the possibility that Moorman made it to the island alive, he probably died shortly after getting there, since the island has absolutely no source of water on it. I guess that's a pretty good theory.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty plausible theory. But then you have the government survey. They said that nothing was found 6 years later. So what's up with that? But then I could just think maybe the government just made a mistake. Maybe the survey, they missed it, or they didn't list it or something, or they got something mixed up, or they did a survey of a different island and then they marked it as the island where, the body was found. So that's a possibility as well. I think the case is solved. I think, we might not know the exact specifics of how these men perished, but it was definitely it was nature. Nature took them out because, they were in the elements. A storm came. They weren't really prepared. They didn't have any emergency equipment. They didn't have any supplies. I don't know why they were going out there without that type of, that's a necessity, I would think, in the middle of the ocean.
They probably got overconfident, it was a clear, calm weather, and they just thought they'd wing it, and they were overconfident and nothing wrong could happen.
Exactly. And the boat itself was pretty small as well, so it's not like this boat would really hold up very well to really high seas or, really strong winds. So I give a lot of credit, though, to the father, I think, John Hanchett Sr., a lot of his effort, to go in the middle of the storm to try, to search for his boy and his friends. I mean, that he took a big risk just going in, and he could have been lost at sea himself. So that shows you, of course, how much he cared about his son and probably about, his friends as well, because, if he probably knew his son's friends quite well too. So,
well, folks,
it's a very tragic tale, and they definitely, they got lost at sea.
All right, so if those stories didn't bum you out too much, we got another one that probably will. This one was on the Ultimate Collection under the Bizarre Murders, called Friends Till the End. Very mysterious case, very sad case. Let's get right into it. In the pre-dawn hours of August 23rd, 1987, a 75-car, 6,000-ton cargo train made its routine run to Little Rock, Arkansas. The train was over a mile long and was traveling at 53 miles per hour. So far, the run had been clear sailing as engineer Stephen Schroyer was approaching the small town of Bryant, Arkansas. Suddenly, Schroyer saw something in its path. The conductor made the horrific discovery that 2 people were lying motionless across the train tracks. 2 boys, to be exact. From the time that we had placed, this is him talking, from the time we had placed the train into an emergency position and laid down on the horn, I would estimate about 3 seconds until impact. That may not sound like a long period of time, but when you're bearing down on 2 children, it's an eternity, honestly. Man, this guy, this poor bastard, Stephen Schroyer, he, even still in this segment, he seems mentally tormented by this. I felt so bad for this guy. Like, he felt...
Well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, I mean, God, that guy was still carrying that, like, on his shoulders, and you could see it in his face, you could hear it in his voice. I felt so bad for this guy, just doing his job, and you know, he just... This shitty thing just happens, and, you know, he... You know, it's human nature for him to feel responsible in some way, even though he has no responsibility over this whatsoever. But, you know, I just felt bad for that guy. So, also, I'd like to point out, on this particular segment, looks like some kind of a different kind of camera is used for the interview portions, because they're very fuzzy, almost out of focus looking sometimes. But it definitely had that very kind of dreamy kind of look to it, fuzzy, kind of like that 90s, like, interview, like that you would see on like interview shows and stuff. It definitely had that going on hardcore for this show. So that's just a
that could have been the way that they remastered the segment on the DVD. I mean, that could be a possibility as well.
It did. Well, I mean, if they remastered it, it didn't make it look any newer. That's for sure. It looked very dated, but I liked it. I liked the look of it. Just as like kind of like a tech side note there, I just wanted to point that out. Something I observed. It seemed like there was maybe some different technique used in the interviews for these. Despite the engineer's frantic emergency stop, the 6,000-ton cargo train ran for another half mile as it passed over the boys. Their bodies were terribly mangled. As a parent, Jesus. What a nightmare. The 2 boys were identified as 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives, 2 popular seniors at the Bryant, Arkansas High School. The state medical examiner said the boys were under the influence of marijuana, ruled the deaths accidental, and the boys' parents began a crusade to find out what happened and salvage the reputation of their 2 boys. Now, this is the father, Larry Ives, quoted here saying, "I couldn't believe Kevin was knocked out on marijuana or under the influence of any heavy drugs like that, because I was home a lot during the day when Kevin come in during school, and Linda was here at nights, and we had never seen him in a state where he was spaced out, or however you want to phrase it. I just couldn't see any signs that he was into any kind of heavy drugs or any kind of drugs really at all." Now, you know, it's 1,000% possible, but that these kids were totally, you know, potheads and the parents would never know. This kind of shit happens all the time. But that does, to me, it just simply doesn't explain what ends up happening to them. What ended up happening to them. Kevin and Don were typical teenage boys. They like to work on their cars. They like to hunt. Most weekends, the boys double dated. However, on the weekend of Saturday, August 22nd, 1987, Kevin and Don met a group of friends on the outskirts of Little Rock. It was a favorite gathering spot. The boys left around midnight to go back to Don's parents' house. This is the father, quoting the father here. "They came in at approximately 12:15. He told me where he was going. I told him to be careful. He took my .22 caliber rifle and my spotlight. The boys went out to go spotlighting, which is a form of night hunting that is illegal in Arkansas, and in my opinion, incredibly fucked up and inhumane form of hunting, but whatever. One of the boys would shine a spotlight in the animal's eyes, transfixing their prey, while the other shot at it. This was a common activity amongst the local boys in this community. So far, Don and Kevin had avoided being caught by the police. That night, the boys chose their usual hunting ground along the railroad tracks near their home." Now, quoting the father again, "I never was even concerned, you know, worried about him when he was hunting in the woods, because, I never realized you could get in trouble for hunting."
I mean, you gotta know that that's illegal.
You would think.
I mean, as a parent. And also, I mean, I can't help but think about this. I mean, these are kids. This is before the internet, folks. So, they couldn't just get on the internet. They couldn't just play the Xbox or whatever. Couldn't play Grand Theft Auto or whatever. I mean, they couldn't just go in and do hunting games or something on the computer. So, there really wasn't a lot. I guess they had to find something to do, and other kids did it too. But also, to be honest, it's kind of like, why are any of these parents allowing these kids to go out in the woods at night by themselves with weapons? I mean, by the train tracks. I'm not trying to be, the paranoid guy here, but come on. I mean, you can't you can't let them do that. That's just. But then again, the kids could have just done it themselves anyway without the parents' permission. So
just like with the weed thing. Yeah. So I mean, and I guess you and I are kind of imposing our biases onto this small town because there are parts of America where this is totally the norm. Where that happens. For you and I, we could never really think that would make much sense.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be the norm. It's not safe. I mean, can you honestly say? I mean, with logically, my kids, these teenagers are young teens. I think they're like preteens, and we're like 18.
Well, no, they were 16 and 17. Yeah,
16 and 17. So they're fairly, they're young adults, I guess. But at the same time, I don't know. And we don't want them around at night, with a gun.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like the smartest idea in the world, but at the same time, I guess if they were a lot younger, then I guess it would be even more like, wow, really? You're letting your 8-year-olds go out there? That's what I was thinking at first, but now that they're 16 and 17, I'm like, okay, I guess I can kind of see that. They're probably rebellious teenagers. They're like, whatever, all the other guys are doing it, And they probably had done something, or they probably had a track record of, they proved themselves to their parents as being safe enough with their guns and gun safety to where they trusted them. They built up that trust with them. So, it was 1 a.m. in the morning when all this was going on. 3 hours later, Stephen Shorer's locomotive came speeding down the hill. When we were about 6... This is Stephen Shorer, the engineer again. When we were about 6 poles away from it, my conductor yelled out, "Big hole!" I immediately recognized what we saw. And then the camera cuts back to the engineer after he said that. He just has the saddest look on his face. God, I felt bad for this guy. He goes, "It looked like a body. Morgue. They were just laid out." The boys were laid out exactly parallel on the tracks, arms straight down by their sides, partially covered by a light green tarp. Laying parallel to both of them was Don's .22 caliber rifle. Neither boy was moving. Quote, "I just started laying down on the diesel horn and I got no reaction. Not at all. Not so much as a flinch, and we just passed over him." What caused the boys to do this? Medical examiner concluded the boys had smoked a total of 22 marijuana cigarettes. They were deeply stoned, pretty much. I just read that note that I wrote that after the 22 marijuana cigarettes.
Can you imagine Robert Stack saying that?
Yeah.
They were deeply stoned, pretty much.
The boys were fucked up.
Fucked up.
Quote. Now this is a quote from the mom. If they were that stoned, how did they lay down in identical positions? Now, that's something to consider.
They were positioned in ways that it was impossible for someone under the influence of marijuana to end on. So, I mean, that is definitely a valid point.
And then one of the dads chimes in, they checked the train, it was 98 decibels. Now, that's compared to like a jackhammer or an air compressor. I would think it would be louder than that, honestly, but... And then it goes back to him. I don't think anyone could sleep through that kind of noise. Another thing, too, my son's gun was laying on the gravel. I know my son too well. He would never lay it on the gravel. He wouldn't take a chance on the wood getting scratched. I'm sorry, folks. I know this is a sad case and this is tragic, but that was kind of a funny statement. Especially how he said it. You just have to listen to it. He's like... I don't know. He's just like, another thing too, my son's gun was laying on the gravel. I know my son too well. He would never lay it on the gravel. He wouldn't take a chance on the wood getting, it's like, dude, I don't know. It's like the gravity of the situation he's talking about his son's gun getting scratched. I don't know, maybe.
Well, man, that's the type of person he is. You know, he just knows, he tells it like it is, and, you know, he knows that his son wouldn't do that. And
fair enough.
That didn't really bother me.
I always thought it was kind of a funny statement, even when I first saw it a long time ago. I was like, that's not funny as in entertaining, but just funny as in like that's
peculiar,
like a peculiar.
I mean, if you're saying it's a peculiar statement, I can agree with that. But in terms of like, oh, haha, that's so funny, like hilarious, like I was laughing my ass off at this guy, this father talking about his dead kid, who, he was like, he wouldn't leave his gun like that. I mean,
if somebody edited together some of the scenes from episode 16 of our podcast, and then edited together some from this one, someone could really make me sound like a horrible person with this case. Because last episode I was like, oh, this was a great case, and I was like, well, not great as in the kids died, and then I'm just like, well, what he said was funny, just that I don't know. You could really edit this together, some sound bites to make me sound like if I was ever running for president, you could make me sound like a piece of shit from this podcast. So at that point, they hired a personal investigator to try and find out what happened. Every time he would find something out, he would meet resistance from different authorities. They weren't getting anywhere. 5 months after their sons were killed, the parents held a press conference to force the police to reopen the case and look into it. Quote, "Would you like to give up your son and everybody think he was smoked up and laid down and passed out? No one wants to lay down their kid unless it's proved to be the truth, then you have to accept it." That's what the dad said at the press conference. The day after the press conference, the case was reopened. Newly appointed prosecutor Richard Garrett had the boys' bodies exhumed for a second autopsy. Now, this time they found out it wasn't 20, but only 1 to 3 marijuana cigarettes, also known as joints. It's okay, Unsolved Mysteries. You can be a little hip sometimes and call it a joint. So it was evidence that one was already dead and one was unconscious when they were laid down on the tracks, which obviously makes sense if they're how they were laid out. Obviously, they were laid out, but by who and how and what is the big question here. In July of 1988, a few months before I was born, the jury reversed the findings of the medical examiner and labeled it a probable homicide, which was smart relabeling of that. Then, the green tarp. Neither boys owned a green tarp. Who put it there? Why? Police who searched the scene later denied that Schroyer told them about the tarp. Schroyer being the train engineer. Schroyer says it was there. He's like, you're not going to tell me that tarp wasn't there. Saying the tarp wasn't there was basically just like saying the boys weren't there. It was there. Police, again, they said that Schroyer never told him about that. Where did where the tarp came from is unknown, but apparently it's never been found either. So that's curious. Investigations opened an intriguing lead. A week before the boys were found, a man was seen walking around in the woods. When the man was stopped to be questioned, he fired a gun and ran away. Witnesses again reported the man in military fatigue walking around that night, kind of walking away from town. Now that's definitely something that would be worth investigating.
That's a lead worth digging into or looking up.
Because obviously if this guy's walking around in the woods in the vicinity of train tracks and the two boys happen upon him, the guy could be nuts. I mean, he's firing a gun and runs away from the cops, like that's not the behavior of somebody who doesn't have something to hide.
This one, the one where the local witness, claims that he saw 2 police officers beating the boys senseless, 2 boys senseless in the store parking lot before tossing them into a truck and driving away.
What?
Now that one wasn't mentioned in the.
No.
Oh yeah, this is from Wikipedia, the Unsolved Mysteries wiki, and not really Wikipedia. It's wiki. There's a difference apparently. They're not the same thing. This is it's a rumor that a local witness claims that he saw 2 police officers beating 2 boys senseless in a store parking lot before tossing them into a truck and driving away. It is unknown whether or not they were Kevin and Dawn. The theory is they might have accidentally observed a drug drop. In 1996, Linda Ives released a video, Obstruction of Justice, detailing the botched investigation and cover-up of an alleged drug ring in Saline County. Several people had been implicated in this conspiracy, which has involved numerous investigations and 2 grand juries.
Damn, I didn't hear about that. Shit. That's, they definitely didn't mention that one on the segment. I guess that's what that Wikia page is good for, and we try to bring you this kind of additional information anytime we can.
I mean, if that is true, I mean, that can explain why they weren't really able to solve the case. The police were not very cooperative. There was just a lot of, maybe there were cops. There was a drug deal with cops going down, dirty cops, and then these kids saw it, and they were like, we don't want any witnesses, and, yeah.
So Richard Garrett, the newly appointed prosecutor, he comes in and he says, I think that someone took these boys' lives. They incapacitated the boys, and to cover their tracks, they covered them with a tarp and laid them on the tracks. I've never carried a gun in my life, but since we started working on this, I am carrying a gun because I do feel like that my life could be in danger at some point.
If there wasn't an alleged drug ring in that county, in Salem County.
You know what? You're right.
I mean, that would make sense.
That would make a lot of sense. Hey, prosecutor, keep your nose out of our business kind of thing. That's like the women's prison killing. There was a bunch of corrupt. That's a whole nother segment.
Frontera, yeah.
We'll probably cover that next episode. I think we already got two contenders for next episode there. So whatever it takes, however long it takes, as long as there's anything to investigate, as long as there's anything to work on, we'll do it, is the kind of the final quote from one of the mothers. And then the dad, man, that ends with the dad, and it's heartbreaking. He's quoted as saying, and it's the scene shows the dad walking up and down these very train tracks that the kids were found on, and it's like the sun setting, and
that's the heart-wrenching,
because my dad's very Southern, and it's like I could just as well picture this being my dad saying this. He's quoted as saying, hundreds of times I've been out there day and night just trying to get into my mind what could have happened or what did happen. I've been out there at night to see how far you can see the train, how far can you hear the train, how far is the train. I basically think that they walked up on something that they was not supposed to have seen. I think they was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I think in my mind that they was murdered and was put there. And that's how these segments ends.
You couldn't help but feel for him. I mean, my heart goes out to him and his family, and it's still unresolved, this case. Although this case first aired on the October 12th, 1988 episode, it was also the subject of a book, The Boys on the Tracks by Mara Leverett, published by Bird Call Press in 1999. And of course, the segment it ranks as one of the most remembered one in the series. Scott Johnson and Norman Ladner are 2 other cases involving youths who might have been murdered after observing drug drops. The case is unresolved. Police later found evidence of stab wounds on Don's shirt, and the investigation changed from probable homicide to definite homicide. Tips at the telecenter suggested that he and Kevin were murdered by drug dealers. Could have been these dirty cops. And that they may have stumbled onto them with the drugs. However, no suspects were ever named in the case. It was dirty cops. And in 1995, the investigation into the murders was officially closed without their killer captured or identified. I mean, if there is some validity to that rumor that it was these, police officers who were corrupt and were dealing drugs and some kind of drug ring in that area, I mean, it would be fairly plausible that that's why these boys were and wound up dead, and why there hasn't really been justice served. As screwed up as that is, I mean, you would think the justice system would, be able to serve justice, even against people who are trying to uphold, the law. But sometimes, in these small counties and these small places, if the police station or whatever becomes completely corrupt, then it's very hard to have any sort of justice. Because how can you have justice when the law itself is unlawful? When the law itself is it's blind to the the law, the rules of the law.
Yeah, it's these small counties, man. It's like there's the good old boy network with the police and the sheriff and the that local government. It's a good old boy network, and if you stumble across something that you're not supposed to, then they'll just as soon kill you than arrest you, because they feel like they can get away with it, because it's kind of like up to the local jurisdiction to make those kind of calls. And if they have the whole kind of board in their back pocket, then they can kind of get away with this stuff a lot of times. There's on the Bizarre Murders on the Ultimate Collection, there's a segment called Trailer Terror, where this trailer is burned to the ground, and these girls are missing. And again, it was a small town, and the brother had told one of the victims told his brother, if anything happens to me, it's the sheriff's department. And he, drove the point home and just pointed his finger in his brother's face and said, listen to me, if anything happens to me, it's the sheriff's department. And then something happened to him, and it was one of these small town things, and it was thought to be drug related. So, but the thing is, you just don't know, though, because then you got that crazy guy shooting off guns in the woods too. So,
well, you got that, but I mean, maybe they hired the guy. Maybe they hired a guy to do that or whatever, to finish the job or something.
True, maybe.
I mean, that's a possibility as well. I mean, in these cop lands, so to speak, I mean, nothing is necessarily out of the question. But once again, you just don't have any evidence. We don't have anything to really make any sort of conviction. But it's very frustrating with that kind of thing goes on, and still goes on.
Oh,
I mean, I guarantee there's still a bunch of cop lands in some town somewhere, small town. It doesn't even necessarily have to be in the South. It could be in the Pacific Northwest. It could be in in the East Coast, or in California somewhere. I mean, it is sickening to me that the people who are supposed to uphold the law and protect us and follow the letter of the law, could really be breaking it, and could be responsible for killing people, silencing people, and and they just go on doing it, and justice is never served. And it's just dirty cops piss me off. Like, that's the thing that really just, corrupt cops is, it's they're every bit as bad as any other killer to me.
Oh yeah, even worse, because people have put their trust in them to uphold the law and protect and serve. So we're gonna have to switch gears here. I'm running out of time. Personally, I have to run and jump on to a Halloween gig here at this yacht club that's by my house. And but before we go, though, I did really want to bring this up. This is something that Mike first showed me, and then one of our listeners commented on the Facebook page. So I did want to talk about this because I brought this up on one of our previous podcasts. Guitar player and former lead vocalist from the band Blink-182, Tom DeLonge. If you have any vague interest in that band at all, it's no secret that he's always been super interested in aliens and UFOs. And I mean, he's essentially dedicated his life to being basically a UFO researcher. He's used his star power to get access to a lot of these higher up officials, and kind of climb the ladder, I guess, so to speak, to meet these people. And so he's got a book that he's released that's supposedly nonfiction about UFO, encounters and stories and all that, anecdotes. I have not read the book yet, though I would like to. Mike, I think you were saying something that the book was a little more on the fiction-y side than what people they would like you to believe.
Yeah.
But anyway, recently Wiki-Leaks published UFO emails that were sent to the Clinton campaign, namely Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta. There were about, I believe, 25 email correspondences between Podesta and DeLonge about UFOs. Now, I mean, there's kind of a lot to say about this, but I'm trying to sum it up as best as I can. John Podesta has always been kind of a UFO advocate, and he's always been big on, exposing that truth, which is very awesome that there's somebody up in, that level of government that is interested in that. He actually said, because he stepped down early last year from his position as senior advisor to Barack Obama, before he did that, he tweeted, finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again not securing the disclosure of the UFO files, hashtag the truth is still out there. I mean, this is a senior advisor to President Obama tweeting this. And then Hillary Clinton went on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and, I don't know how much water this holds with most people, but she said that she would release any kind of information relating to Roswell, provided that doing so would not pose a threat to national security, which I find that interesting because Bill Clinton was actually interviewed about UFOs when he was still in office, and he kind of like, with a wink and a grin, like kind of blew the question off, kind of like, oh, I don't know anything. I gotta try to do my best Bill Clinton impersonation. Oh, I don't know anything about. Fuck it. I'm giving up on the impression. He's like,
Hank Hill.
I'll tell you what. He's like, I don't know anything about any of that stuff, the UFOs or anything like that. He's like, I'd like to know. He's like, I wish they'd tell me, if there was anything to it. He's like, I'd like to know, but he's like, but he was kind of grinning the whole time, like, what a stupid question, That's kind of how he was treating the question. Like,
I did not know anything about those UFOs.
I did not have sexual relations with an alien being. But anyway, Tom DeLonge, whatever, however you want to say it. Some excerpts from his email is as follows. I would like to bring two very, quote, end quote, important people out to meet you in DC. This is to John Podesta. I think you will find them very interesting, as they were principal leadership relating to our sensitive topic. But both were in charge of the most fragile divisions as it relates to classified science and DoD topics. Other words, these are A-level officials worth our time, and as well as the investment to bring all the way out to you. I just need 2 hours from you. Now, this is all in relation to Roswell and all that kind of stuff. He wanted to have a casual and private conversation in person with Podesta, possibly for a movie that DeLonge has been working on about UFOs. So I'm sure, that would have been a nice, interview to have. There's some other names that are thrown around in here, like General McCasland, who was in charge of the whole Roswell kind of cover up, as far as like where I believe like where all the various debris and all, like the various bases that they were dispatched to and all. And McCasland apparently in public has denied the existence and all that. But according to Tom in this email, quote, he mentioned he's a quote unquote skeptic. He's not. He just has to say that out loud, but he is very, very aware, as he was in charge of all the stuff. When Roswell crashed, they shipped it to the laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. General McCasland was in charge of that exact laboratory up to a couple years ago. Now, according to these WikiLeaks, it's unclear if Podesta ever responded to these messages, but he has shown interest in UFOs in the past, as I said earlier. So, yeah, all that's going on. Some articles, like this article, the particular article that you sent me, Mike, I just thought the editorial nature of this article was kind of fucked from the beginning. It's like they do give you the info, but the guy writing the story is a douchebag. He starts off the article by going, The former lead singer of Blink-182, Tom DeLonge, has publicly admitted to his obsession with UFOs, but that still doesn't explain why he was sending 2 cryptic messages about aliens, spacecrafts to hit Hillary Clinton's campaign, Chairman John Podesta, as the Wall Street Journal reported earlier today. The former rock star's UFO emails became public in the latest WikiLeaks dump published earlier this month. DeLonge, who is best known for his shitty guitar riffs and vocals in the songs like What's My Age Again, emailed Podesta at least twice. Okay, let's just stop there. Why so personal, bro? Like, I don't...
Exactly.
You're like, wow, like, pump the fucking brakes, man. If this article had any kind of... if I respected this, the writer of this article at all, like, he lost all my respect there. Now, granted, I do like Blink-182. They're not my favorite band in the world, but I do like them. But if it had been any guy from any band, I mean, you have this very kind of informative stuff that you're reading, and then all of a sudden you read DeLonge, who is best known for his shitty guitar riffs and vocals. Like, dude, that's the most, like, subjective thing you could write in a piece that's
not really subjective. I mean, isn't that like being subjective? Isn't that somebody?
That's your opinion. Subjective is is your all.
I thought it was. Yeah, I would say it's the most assholishness thing. It's a dick move. It really is. It doesn't make you look good. It's unprofessional. It's the type of journalism that is just unacceptable, in my opinion, in a major publication or any of that kind of thing. I mean, if you're getting paid to write, you know, to be a journalist, especially nowadays when this is a very hard, you know, business to get into. I mean, I've thought about it, but I'm like, you got to know people. You got to know. And sometimes it's so frustrating because you got people who are a lot less talented than you might be when it comes to as a writer, when it comes to writing and so on. But they know the right people, and that's why they get the job. And I always hate that. I hate workplace politics. But anyway, that just makes you look like an ass.
The main thing, obviously,
I wouldn't write that, even if I didn't like his vocals or his music. That's not the way you.
But if you go even deeper than just the surface level assholeness of the comment, you know, obviously they're trying to spin this to where Tom DeLonge is a shitty guitar player and vocalist from a crappy punk pop band, and crazy Tom DeLonge is talking about UFOs, and crazy Tom DeLonge is they're just making the guy seem like a buffoon. They're making him seem like he's just a jackass, you know, like, oh, this shitty guitar player from this washed up punk pop band is digging into UFOs now, but they're totally like nullifying the gravity of time and effort that Tom has dedicated to putting into this, and they're also neglecting the fact that out of any UFO researcher, you know, someone with the star power and the clout that Tom DeLonge has been afforded because of his success in the mainstream, how much more easier is it going to be for somebody like Tom to talk to these guys who are in the know, quote unquote? I mean, think about if me or Mike or hell, even a well-renowned UFO reporter or investigator was to try to contact, you know,
like J. Allen Hynek or, you know, someone like that. Yeah.
Say they try contacting high-level government officials.
Stanton Friedman.
They're gonna look at these guys and be like, oh, another one of these wacko UFO researchers. But if you got, oh yeah, you remember that band that your daughter really likes, Blink-182? Yeah, the lead singer guitar player is really gotten serious about UFO investigation. Even if you think that sounds silly, it's like you at least know who he is. Oh, I know who that guy is. He was on, he's been on TV, there are music videos, they've sold millions of records. It's like, this guy did something right. You know, Tom did something right to be able to bring his band to that kind of level of star power, because Blink-182 is still incredibly huge. If you think I'm lying, go look it up. Believe me, as Donald Trump would say. God, I can't believe I just quoted that guy. But anyway, so yeah, obviously they're trying to make DeLonge come off as a nut job, but the San Diego Union Tribune actually wrote a much more fair or balanced article about kind of what went down and everything, and I'll post that onto our Facebook page here, so you can read up on that. So you can kind of see more like a unbiased kind of look into it. But it's really fascinating, and we're getting closer, man. Like we're getting closer to figuring out about Roswell and all that, and I think we're finally getting to the point to where we as a society are ready. We're ready to for the truth, I guess. We can handle the truth at this point, I feel like. So that was a very interesting article. It has to do with anything UFO that comes up I'm going to want to talk about. So I thought that was really worth mentioning.
All right. Yeah.
So that's all the time we have, folks. Unfortunately, I got to run. And I'm looking at the time here, and we still managed to clock in around the same exact time that we do for all of our podcasts. So
hey, that's just, we just like to talk. I gotta run too. I got math homework to do and gotta get ready for class tonight. Hopefully I passed my second math test. I passed the first one.
Oh, congratulations. Good for you, man.
The second one, there were some graphing problems I know I got wrong, but I get like 2 mulligans. So maybe those will be the 2 mulligans, and then we'll see what happens. But I know I got those.
Well, because you wear glasses, you're obviously smart. Isn't that how the stereotype goes?
Well, everything else I was fine with. And then there was like one other problem near the end. I think I did all right, but we'll see what happens. I'm not too worried about it because, for one, there's 6 tests. I passed the first one. If I don't do spectacular in this one, it's not the end of the world. I can still go in and do better in the next ones, and then do well in the final, and I'm still good to go. So it's not like I'm trying to keep some A. I'm not trying to get an A. I'm just trying to pass.
All right, well, Mike's going through doing good on his test there. I survived Hurricane Matthew. You guys are hopefully all alive and well. Run through all the pertinence real quick before we wrap up. You can become a fan of us on Facebook. We're posting shit on there all the time. You can get in touch with us on there, facebook.com/uncovering.
Probably start a poll before the Halloween episode, but we're not there yet.
But so. That's also patreon.com/uncovering unsolved mysteries. If you want to donate to the podcast, you get a bunch of extra bonuses on there. So don't think that you're just giving us money and not getting anything in return. You do get stuff in return on the Patreon, but I'm just going to make you go over there and look at it. I'm not even going to tell you all that you get from doing that. But we appreciate so much the people who have already donated their money. I mean,
absolutely.
God,
thank you
much. Guys. Seriously, you blow my mind that like anybody would give us anything, but hell, we thought it was worth a try, and people have opened their hearts. Old Bill Burr reference.